Okay, well, we get started. It's 2 o'clock. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for the 2023 Recycled Water Customer Meeting here on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. My name is Andrew Romero, the Reclamation Superintendent for the City of Santa Rosa, and I'll be host for today's meeting. Our agenda today is to introduce new city staff, briefly discuss this year's wet winter, which was great for the region and very much needed. Share some information regarding flooding that happened at the plant this year. And provide a summary of last year's irrigation season. Review the current recycled water supply. Discuss this year's allotments and procedures. Frost protection use, ag pump station startups, and ongoing meter testing. And lastly, we'll share some billing information. Then at the end, we could answer any general questions. Just a friendly reminder, if you do have any questions regarding your personal pump stations, please contact us directly.
Hey, Andrew, it looks like there might be a little bit of a lag in terms of the bullets showing up, just an FYI.
Okay. First, we're going to introduce the city staff that are online today. We have Mike Prinz, Deputy Director of Water Reuse. Myself, Andrew Romero, Reclamation Superintendent. We have Steve Jacobs, Senior Operator. Dennis Rebello, who's actually out in the field, so he's not online at the moment. We also have Priscilla Reyes Jones, the new utility technician for Reclamation. Next, I will turn it over to Mike Prinz so he can talk about this past winter and the impact it had on the Laguna treatment plant. So Mike, go for it.
Thanks, Andrew. So what you see here is an aerial photo that was taken during flooding that occurred on January 9th. This flooding wasn't as bad as flooding that we have experienced in the past, but it's a perspective you may not have seen before of flooding at the plant. And the reason why it's relevant to today's meeting is because the plant is still at risk of flooding, which, if it were bad enough, has the potential to jeopardize the recycled water supply. So the bad news is, yeah, we're still at risk. The good news is we have a very significant project planned that consists of a flood berm that goes along the south side of the plant, more or less where that solar panel array is in the middle of this photo. And if you were to extend that all along the south side of the plant and then actually even partway up the east side, and then it actually is intended to cross Llano Road in an elevated section of the road with flood walls that would come up when there is flooding. And so the end result would be to prevent the flooding into the plant like you see in this photo. So that project is designed. There's some grant funding that's lining up for the project, and it looks like we're going to be able to do that in probably the next 3 years. The next slide, if you want to advance, just shows a different perspective of flooding at the plant, more towards the west, towards the compost facility at the top of the photo, and shows how flooding comes into the plant. Again, this flooding on January 9th was, I think it was the worst we saw this winter. It's not the worst that has occurred. And in fact, the flooding that we had in 2006 was particularly bad and far worse than is shown here. So we still have 2 to 3 more winters to go through with the degree of risk of flooding. We do have some temporary flood walls and some removable barriers that will limit the amount of impact to the plant for moderate flooding, let's say low to moderate flooding that would otherwise have an impact, but it is possible that we could encounter flooding that would still exceed the capacity of that temporary flood wall. You may have seen it around the plant. There's some concrete blocks that are visible from Llano Road at the south end of the plant. Again, those flood blocks comprising the overall wall do help, but it's not to the degree that a new flood berm will. So again, we are still at some degree of risk until we get the flood berm project done in, say, roughly 3 years. Next slide. So this is actually a tool that we use online pretty regularly to determine what kind of flooding we think we might experience. The USGS and National Weather Service have a lot of data that they put out, and this shows the flood stage as measured in blue and then as predicted in purple when we were, I think this snapshot was taken January 5th. So anything in the salmon colored band below the purple band is a pretty significant concern, and you can see that there was a predicted high crest of 86 feet in the vicinity of January 9th. I don't have the chart that actually shows as measured, but I think this was pretty accurate. And we use this to figure out when we need to deploy the removable Tiger dams, the temporary dams. They're actually a brand name Tiger Dam that you may have heard referenced before. But nonetheless, this is a tool that we use to really figure out what kind of flooding is going to happen on the Laguna de Santa Rosa. The gauge for this is at Stony Point, so upstream of the plant a little bit. And it's generally a pretty good indicator, although I wouldn't say it's perfect. So we tend to be cautious about making decisions about when to deploy our removable barriers. Again, once we get the flood berm done, we won't really need this at all because it'll protect the plant without having to deploy anything temporary. Next slide. So Andrew, was this your slide? You were going to go over the plant flows. I think we're just moving over to you now, right?
Yeah, I have the plant flows a little bit later.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I'll take over from there.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Mike, for that update. So 2022 ag irrigation season summary. So last year's irrigation season seemed good given the continued drought conditions and with the plant producing one of the lowest producing years on record. However, it did seem like a mild summer, so the weather was favorable for irrigation. We were able to supply frost protection to our vineyard users. However, as a reminder, frost users should always have a backup plan as the system could experience a failure, impacting our ability to supply frost protection. So it's always recommended to have fans or an alternate source of water available if this were to happen. Allotments were guaranteed through September 30th. In October, we like to have the storage lowered prior to wet weather season to prevent or to reduce probability of a discharge. We officially ended irrigation season on October 12th. For informational purposes, 89% of the agriculture allotments were used. So 1.13 billion gallons was used out of the 1.27 billion gallons allotted for ag last season. The 2022 urban irrigation and geysers summary. The slide is a summary of the urban and geysers usages. Urban irrigation tapered off around mid-October. City of Rohnert Park used 307 million gallons of their 450 million gallons contractual agreed amount. And the Santa Rosa urban users used 31.6 million gallons. The geysers received 91.17%. The city is contractually obligated to deliver 90% of the contractual amount of 4.6 billion gallons per year. So this next slide shows the last 6 years of the geysers delivery percentages to Calpine. You can see in the last 3 years of the drought, we minimized our delivery to Calpine to make more water available to all recycled water users. Again, we are contractually obligated to deliver 90% of this contract. However, with the winter we experienced this year, it's possible that we could see a higher delivery percentage to manage our overall storage. The next slide, this graph illustrates plant production. On the y-axis is the monthly average million gallons per day, and the x-axis is the months of the year. Last year's production is the red dotted line. This year's production is the black solid line. So you can see the flows are starting to decrease, but we expect them to follow a similar pattern compared to last year's summer and fall months. This next slide shows the storage curve heading into this year's irrigation season. So we currently have 1,250 million gallons in storage. The red line in the graph is this year's storage, and the black line was last year's storage for comparison. This storage curve is updated and posted the first week of each month on our city's Ag Smart page. This next graph shows the last decade of discharges, including this year. Due to this year's wet winter, which was great for the region, however, it was more than we could store, so therefore we had a discharge, which was about 700 million gallons this year. Next slide, the 2023 allotments have been generated, and you should be receiving allotment notifications via email. If you're not receiving allotment updates monthly, please contact us so that we can make sure you're receiving this information. We have been sending out allotment notifications via email since January of 2023, and we plan to continue to send out these notifications through September. Also, another reminder that we only guarantee to the best of our ability allotments through September. We will continue to support transfers of allotments between users, but we must receive an email prior to any transfers. This year, we will irrigate city farms to reuse the water that was stored in those ponds over the winter. Next slide. Also, just a reminder that frost protection was and is still available if needed this irrigation season. As a friendly reminder that all usages for frost protection will be deducted from your 2023 allotment. All frost protection must not create ponding or runoff for the recycled water use requirements. In addition, we continue to recommend all of our users to maintain a backup supply or fans. Upcoming, our goal is to have all ag pump stations back in service no later than May 19th. But if needed sooner, please contact us. We will be contacting all users in the next few weeks to schedule a date that we could put your pump station back in service if it's not already. However, we do need some irrigation equipment put out so that we can test the operations of the pump station. We will continue to also test the meters for accuracy, and this should not have any impacts on your irrigation season. This next slide has some billing information, and any questions regarding billing, please contact Priscilla at 707-543-3388. And also, as a friendly reminder, per the agriculture fee schedule starting January 2023, the fee is $37.50 per acre foot. And that has concluded our recycled water supply update, and we are available to answer any general questions. If you have any questions regarding your personal station, please contact us directly. And so Priscilla, I'll turn it over to you. And if there's any hands raised, you can answer some questions.
Okay, and if you're calling in by phone, you hit *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. We have a question from Ken.
It is.
Ken, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Priscilla, thank you very much. I just had a question. I may have missed it, but reading this paper, the news stories about the projected increased use at the geysers, with multiple groups looking at building out more facilities up there. Where does that leave the city of Santa Rosa and recycled water as far as demand?
Mike, if you want.
Yeah, I can answer that. My understanding of most of the interest in what you're talking about, Ken, is for systems that are essentially closed systems and they don't need water. So I think their intent is, and this is based on what I know, I don't know all the specific proposals, But what I have learned is that their intent is to recycle the water that they're using, so they would capture and condense steam and reuse it.
Great.
You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we have a contractual obligation to supply to Calpine. I believe that's through 2037. And, you know, with the demand that we have, other than, you know, really wet years like we've had the past winter, all our water is spoken for. So no one has approached Santa Rosa that I'm aware of asking for any water. And right now, I mean, we wouldn't be in a position to supply anymore because of the obligations that we already have. So again, my understanding is those proposals are for recycling the water and condensing steam and reusing that water.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
I have another question. Robert, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well.
Same to you.
The question that I have is on the increase in allotments. Last year, you increased our allotments, I think, through August. But for many of us, those increases came too late for us to really utilize the water the way we should have. And it really is difficult when you have a crop in the ground and you don't know whether you're going to be able to continue it or not until the very last minute. Something needs to be worked out there some way. I think with all the information you guys have, you could tighten that up a little bit. That would be my suggestion.
Well, you know, Bob, we totally agree with you.
Totally.
It's less helpful, if at all, to get increases later in the year. And so that's why Andrew and I are looking at calculations and updating. I think, you know, we just mentioned in a slide back a little bit ago that we're up to 1.45 billion gallon allotment for this coming season. We're going to be revisiting that number over the course of the next month. We may be able to increase a little bit more, but we do understand that if storage levels support increasing allotments later in the year, it's of less value because you have business decisions that you'd have to make for the front end of the growing season. We totally understand that. As it turns out, you know, we can't really predict how any given year is going to turn out in terms of temperature and humidity and what the demand is going to be. So when storage levels are higher than we predicted them to be, we will increase allotments because we can, but we won't necessarily know you know, what the next month or 2 or 3 is going to be like until we get closer and in time and see what the weather is going to do. So we realize increases in allotments have less value later in the year, but we don't have the benefit of knowing how the season is going to go until later on. So ultimately, you know, we're limited by not really knowing what the weather is going to do to recycled water demand. You know, Andrew, is there anything you would want to add to that?
No, I absolutely agreed. Yeah, I agree. But we are working on better projections of allotments. That's why we're starting to send these allotments out in January. And yeah, I think we could absolutely improve on that. And that's what we're working on.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, when we do have available water, we'll continue to make that water available to the ag users. And that's what we're doing when we increase, when you see an increasement in late summer, that's absolutely what we're doing. If there's any spare water left over, we're making that available to the ag users.
You know, when we announce allotments like we are already, that's based on projections and how the winter has gone, but increases later in the year are based on what the weather is actually doing. And so it's harder to predict what the demand's going to do because it's a function of, heat and humidity, which, it's a forecast that we can't make.
Yeah, so does that mean that you understand that the value of the water later in the year for us growers is not as valuable to us? Does that mean that if you give us allotments like in July and August, that the cost is going to be reduced?
That's not part of the rate system that we have right now. So I don't see how we would be able to do that the way it's set up. But we do understand.
I'm just asking, Mike.
Kind of break it up there, Bob.
Is there any way that we can see who's all on this meeting? All the users?
This meeting is done as a webinar. It's being recorded. And we've discussed doing future meetings as just a regular Zoom webinar where everybody can see the attendees.
And quite frankly, in that vein, unless things change, I see us doing in-person meetings in the future, unless people prefer the Zoom arrangement. But Bob, I asked the same question before the meeting started. This webinar format doesn't allow us to see the attendees, unfortunately. So we would do it differently in the future, if not actually in person.
I can read out a list of attendees if you'd like me to do that.
Well, I think at least once a year, the COVID thing is over. So I think at least once a year, we could get all the users together at a meeting and just have a review like we're having now would be nice.
Sure. I mean, that's my preference, Bob. So we may do another meeting, and if we do this year, we would do it in person, I would hope.
Thank you.
We have another question. Will? I will go ahead and allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question just in regards, I was looking over previous years' allotments and weather systems and storage volume, et cetera. And in the past, back when we had in-person meetings, it was always stressed that there was never going to be a use it or lose it type policy. And we did our best to conserve water when we were asked to. And now we're still looking at a 50% allotment of what we had in 2018. We have less than 50% of what we had in 2017. And it seems to me like we kind of got stuck with a use it or lose it type thing. And we're not getting the same water we used to be offered in previous years with comparable storage. And so I'm just curious as to if there's any plan to change that system, or if we missed the boat and shouldn't have conserved when we were asked to.
So yeah, Will, we've done this the last couple of years. Just a reminder, we're using 2019, I'll look back on it. 2017, 2018, and 2019's usages, the average historical usages for all users. So I know with yours specifically, yeah, we made some changes to yours, and this is the formula that we've been doing now for the last couple of years, and it seems to be pretty effective and working.
I just feel like we got punished for conserving when we were asked to, and it was always stressed in the meetings that it was never going to be a use it or lose it. We have it written in previous communications, and it feels like a bit of a letdown. We're getting punished for doing what we were asked in previous years. We have literally, I think, somewhere around 40% of our 2017 allotment and 52% or something like that of our 2018. So it's a head scratcher for me is all. And I was wondering if that was going to change.
I don't see any changes in the formula, but we're always willing to have the conversation, you know. But I don't personally see any changes in this formula.
Got it.
So Will and Andrew, Andrew, why don't you, when you have time, sit down with me and just go over Will's usage, because I'd like to understand that a little bit better.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
So Andrew, I think you mentioned what we currently are at in terms of the allotment for this coming season. We're at 1.45 billion gallons,
Right.
which is a 28% increase over actual usage last summer. So it's an increase over the original allotment from last summer, but it's a 28% increase over the actual usage from last summer. And Andrew and I are going to be revisiting storage levels and where we are in terms of geysers delivery, and hopefully be able to increase allotments at least one more time. And our goal would be to do that before July 1st. If not, sometime in June, or I should say May.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Any other questions?
Well, if there are any other questions, one thing I will say that I look forward to is having an in-person meeting, because when I've attended these meetings in the past, I've enjoyed being able to see who's attending and catch up a little bit with individuals as the meeting's wrapping up. So that's one thing that I'll look forward to having when we can do in-person meetings. And I think barring any changes, we probably would be doing this meeting and any follow-up meetings in person. So. And Priscilla, you have a list of everyone in attendance?
I do, except for there's an phone person that called in with the numbers ending in 4219. I can't identify that person.
Can that person identify themselves? You know?
They can by pressing *6, or I can allow them to talk. And they have to unmute themselves.
And they don't have to.
Or yeah, well, they don't have to. Sorry, that was the wrong usage of a word. To unmute, press *6.
It's definitely the case.
If they're calling by phone.
Well, and that's the thing.
Okay, well, that concludes this meeting for now. And again, our doors and our phones, our communications are always open. So feel free to contact us if you got any other questions that you weren't able to ask online, or still want to have the conversations about. So definitely feel free to contact us. So again, I thank you guys for your time.
Okay, thanks.